Hello and welcome to The Enthusiasm Project Season 2, Episode 13. My name is Tom, and today we're going to once again talk about an elephant in the room, which, just so you know, today, right now, as I'm recording this, is Sunday, March 29th. As of now, my school where I work has been closed for 2 weeks. This will be our third closed week that starts tomorrow. And that is scheduled to continue at least through the end of April, with there actually being talks and discussion of the possibility of just not even going back at all this school year. And that's not a unique situation for me and my school, my job site. That's pretty much the case for every public school in the state of California, which is absolutely crazy. So that's very strange. The whole state right now of California, where I'm at, is ordered to be shelter in place, which basically just means stay home and only go out if you need, absolute necessities like some groceries or medical care, or you're somebody who's an essential worker that needs to go to work. So it's very weird times. It's pretty much the only time I can think of, definitely in my lifetime, but I mean, historically, I don't know of another one where literally everybody everywhere pretty much on the planet has had their life disrupted to some extent by all of the things happening with the coronavirus and trying to contain that and flatten the curve and slow all that stuff down. So that's probably not a surprise. I'm sure you know that that's happening and that's a thing that's going on. It's hard not to mention it since it's affecting just basically every part of our lives right now. But if you watch any videos on my YouTube channel lately, especially like in the last few weeks that have come out since this, I don't really mention it at all. And the channels that I watch, sometimes people mention it, sometimes people don't. And I think it's a really interesting discussion if you're somebody who creates stuff, whether it's a video, podcast, whatever. If you're somebody who produces things regularly to share online, how you're choosing to go about this and handle it is kind of difficult. And so I wanted to dive into that because, like I mentioned on my channel, I'm basically, at least right now, not mentioning it at all. There might be like a few videos where if I'm teaching something, I'll say, hey, if you find yourself stuck at home with a little extra time, this might be a cool thing to learn how to do, which is sort of like a tongue-in-cheek way of like, hey, nudge, nudge. We're all kind of stuck at home with a little extra time right now. But I don't specifically talk about it. And the reason I don't on my channel is because making stuff that's not related to coronavirus and world news and just doom and gloom is very helpful. Like, it makes me feel better to just focus on something else. It makes things feel normal. It's a relief. I know that for me, when I watch things from other people that are just normal, it makes me feel good. It's comforting in a really helpful way. So right now, I think the best thing that I can do for myself and for anyone who enjoys the stuff that I make is to just do business as usual, even though I know it feels a little bit silly to be like, hey, check out this camera lens review. And it's like, who is shopping for a $2,000 camera lens right now? Not that many people, So I understand sort of the almost naivete of it, but it just feels good. I have been trying to lean towards working on ideas for more like tutorial-based videos, things that you don't necessarily need new equipment or need to spend money on, but are more skill building, just because I think that's a little more practical and beneficial. And hopefully, this whole thing calms down and things can somewhat almost try to resume normalcy. And then I don't just want there to be a huge chunk of my channel that's just like this weird doom, sadness, darkness stuff. So at least that's how it is right now, because there's obviously, hundreds of thousands of people who are dealing with illness and supporting that in terms of like medical stuff. And, then there's people like us. Not when I say us, I mean Heather and I right now, and hopefully you too, who are fine, but we're just sort of sidelined right now. So we're just sort of sitting here trying to figure things out. Maybe job security is there, maybe it's not. So there's anxiety building, but in terms of health and everything, we're fine. So what do we do in that time? It sort of feels strange to just act normal, but it's also like you can't just sit around and not continue your life, especially if you're, staying home and trying to keep busy. Fortunate for us, like home is kind of where we want to be anyway. So like our life hasn't changed that much in terms of the day to day. So, we're lucky in that way. But anyway, going back to, is it okay to create during this chaos? I think obviously the first thing is safety first. So, if you're sick, if people are sick, if everything gets so much worse and it's really just like negatively affecting everybody, most of the population is sick, then I think it would probably be pretty callous to just like, hey, check out this new video or whatever. So, safety and care and kindness and patience, I think all come first. And one of the things that I've learned through all this is when you know that everybody's life has been interrupted and disrupted in some way, it kind of makes it easier to be patient with people in a way that wasn't the case before. Because, if you are out somewhere and somebody cuts you off in traffic, that's always annoying. But also understanding that that person could be going through all kinds of stress and fear and uncertainty in their life, and now they're just, they're driving rudely because they're scared and frustrated. It sort of makes it easier to be a little compassionate. It also really makes you appreciate just the boring normalcy of everyday life that a lot of us probably took for granted and would very much like to get back to. So regardless of what you're doing, safety, kindness, compassion, patience, those are obviously like the foundation. That's the most important thing. Making a video or a podcast or whatever doesn't really matter compared to that. But if those things are checked off and now you're sitting there and you're like, I got time on my hands, I want to make something, is it okay to just make what I would normally make, or do I have to make coronavirus related things, or is it not okay? Should I just not do anything until everything calms down? Like, how does that work? And I don't have an answer. I can kind of just go through what I have learned. I have seen people like myself who are just business as usual, and that's one strategy that people are using. I've seen other people just sort of stop everything, and they don't feel okay making stuff. They don't feel okay sharing stuff. And I've also seen people who are making lots and lots of stuff but not releasing any of it. So they're sort of using this time to build up a catalog, and then when they feel that it's more appropriate or whatever, then they can start releasing all the stuff that they're making. None of those are wrong. They're just all sort of different approaches to the situation. What I did do was I made a couple posts a couple weeks ago over the past couple weeks, I should say. I did one community post on YouTube where I sort of explained this, that I was kind of what I just said here, where I didn't want to make a video about the coronavirus and all that, because there's so many of them, and I just didn't want to be another one. But I also didn't want to be viewed as, naive or insensitive or anything. So I made a community post that people could read that just sort of explained, like basically what I just said. Safety and that kind of stuff is top priority. I hope everybody's okay. If you see me making videos, it's not because I'm callous or insensitive. It's my way of maintaining normalcy and feeling better, and hopefully watching the videos helps you feel better too. And people responded pretty positively to that. And realistically, honestly, like, unless you're doing it really callously, I don't think anyone would see the stuff that you're making and immediately like hate your guts and, block you on everything and never want anything to do with you again. I think if you're making your normal stuff and somebody sees it and they're not in the mood to watch it, they're just not going to watch it, or they're just not going to listen to it. But I don't think it's going to put you on anybody's like enemies list or anything. But then what I also did was I made a Facebook post in one of the YouTube groups, like the YouTube creator groups that I'm a part of, where I sort of just asked people how they're feeling, and I got a ton of responses to that. And a lot of those responses were basically people saying the same thing I did, which is like business as usual is helping them, and it's also helping their audience. So that was sort of our consensus. Not everybody felt that way. And since then, I've seen other discussions in that same group or on Twitter or whatever, where people are, critical of channels and creators and whatever who are just doing business as usual. So essentially, you can't win if you're trying to just go by there is no consensus, I guess is what I'm getting at. There is no, this is absolutely what everybody should be doing. It's kind of just what works best for you, what works best for your audience, and, reevaluating that, knowing that it's going to change over time. So it is different for everyone. Everybody's feelings evolve. Heather and I go to a body combat class at the gym every Sunday where it's like group fitness and it's punching and kicking, and it's really, really fun. And, at the beginning of this year when there was news of the virus, we'd go into our class and you would see people standing around kind of talking about it a little bit. Then we get into our class. Then, a couple weeks later, it was sort of like more and more people were really like disinfecting mats and washing hands and stuff and kind of making jokes about the virus. And then we went to one class and it was like, we're not going to do anything on the floor. So normally you kind of go down and do like burpees or push-ups or whatever. It was like, no floor stuff today. We're just going to stand, not going to use any mats or anything like that. And then after that, like the gym just closed because everything had to close that wasn't essential. So things kind of progress and change, as time goes on. In that case, we went from everyone just sort of like making kind of lighthearted jokes about it to now it's closed and we can't go there anymore for everybody's safety. So just because something seems okay right now doesn't mean that in a month it's going to be that same way. So it's important to check in with yourself, check in with your audience, and just, reestablish what is okay and not okay on a case-by-case basis. But I think it is really important to do what's best for you, especially because if you're making something, that's your energy, your effort, your time, and hopefully it is something that helps other people, but you need to take care of yourself and make sure you're okay before it's going to help someone else. And chances are, if you feel comfortable making something, other people are going to feel comfortable watching it. If you don't feel comfortable with something, then that probably means other people won't feel comfortable with it. So, it's sort of just paying attention to what is happening in your own brain and that kind of stuff. But that idea of escapism, whether it's through a podcast or a video or a review or a video essay or whatever, creating those little moments of escapism for people, I think is something that's extremely helpful and extremely important right now when so many people are stuck at home and, feeling scared and nervous and stuff. And it's a great way to stay sane. It's a great way to connect your audience. I've seen so many people doing live streams who have like never done live streams before. And I think that that's really cool. I've also seen, we've all seen sort of the creativity and the ingenuity of people just finding different ways to interact and different ways to create stuff. And you can kind of feel the collective, like, excitement over normalcy. So, like, I think it was last week, Apple released a bunch of new products, like iPads and a MacBook and stuff. And it was like every tech reviewer went crazy and was making videos about it and posts about it. And I saw someone on Twitter who shared something that was like, gee, was there a new Apple release this week? I can't tell because it's not like every single person in the world is like creating content about it. And I forget who it was, but one of like the big tech YouTubers responded and they were like, just let us have this, please. We need it. And I thought that was important because it's like, not that everyone cares about iPads and MacBook and stuff, but being able to talk about that, being able to focus on something different, something normal, feeling excited about something was way more important than what the thing actually was. And so, it was just like, let them have it. Like, let everyone be really excited about this thing. We know it's not the biggest deal in the world, but let's just enjoy it because it's making everyone feel better. And I think that is, that is a very important service to offer. Now, at the same time, I think it is also important to keep an eye on the tone that you're putting into the stuff that you're making, because I've seen a lot of people, like, now that everybody is working at home, I've seen a lot of content pop up about that. Like, here's live streaming tips. Here are work at home tips. Here's my home desk setup tour, like that kind of stuff, which is fun. Like, I'm in no way criticizing that. But you also don't want to be somebody who's going to be viewed as using a dire situation to your advantage. So if now you're using it to like market a product or sell a product, that can be, that's not something that you want to do. It's almost like all these companies who are, handling this a little bit differently. So for example, Costco, I think right now is getting a lot of good publicity because even though they're constantly out of stock of toilet paper, they treat their employees well, they treat their customers well, they're trying to adapt really well. There are other companies who've had to cancel things or change stuff around, and they're treating their customers and their employees as good as they can. They're offering refunds and services, they're keeping employees employed, they're offering benefits. And then there are also other companies who aren't doing that. So I think it was Hobby Lobby just yesterday. They stayed open much later than most other stores. Hard to argue that Hobby Lobby is an essential store. And then they closed suddenly and then laid off a ton of employees via email with no notice, no anything, nothing like that. And I understand from a business side, they're in a really tough place. But once things go back to normal, there's going to be stuff that sticks to you that's not necessarily what you want to have stuck to you. So, that's going to be something that they have to deal with, okay, we needed you to treat people well and you treated people very poorly. And now you just want to pretend like it's business as usual. So it's kind of the same thing if you're a content creator of any kind, where if you're using this to express your creativity and connect with an audience and explore a worldwide issue that's affecting basically every person on the planet, that's a very normal, natural, good thing to do. If you're profiting off of it, that's a bad thing to do. It's the same, I don't know if you've noticed, but if you watch YouTube videos, a lot of people are trying to avoid saying the word like coronavirus or COVID-19 because they're scared their videos are automatically going to get demonetized just by doing that. And the reason for that, sorry, I just kicked my desk. The reason for that is because YouTube has, one, they have reduced staff during this time, so they don't have as many people able to manually review videos as they normally would. And so what that means is some stuff's going to get flagged that's not inappropriate. But their bigger thing when something like that pops up is they want to market because they don't want people to take advantage of it. So if you are talking about that and you do say those words, your video might get flagged because it might look like you're trying to profit off of a tragedy. And they just don't want that to be a thing that happens. There is the option, which Cody Warner's the one who posted this out or shared this with everyone. It's a really great idea. If you haven't checked out his channel, he's been doing really good, positive stuff that's all about how he and his family are coping during, the lockdowns and not lockdowns, but the shelter-in-place orders and quarantines and all that. But basically, if you're making a video that mentions coronavirus, but you're not doing it in a disingenuous way, all you have to do when you upload your video is click an option that says, it's something like this video discusses sensitive news topic or whatever, and that triggers a manual review. So instead of being automatic, then a person will look at it and they'll realize, oh, there's nothing wrong here, and then they'll release it. So you could even still be monetized, or it could still get pushed out to the same people that it always would. So it's not that you can't talk about these things, it's just how you're doing it and the way that you're doing it. You don't want to be the person that's using a tragedy to your advantage or trying to profit off of something like that. And then, it's not going to end well for anybody. So more than ever, whatever it is that you're creating, being authentic and being genuine is very important. And if you're doing something that you don't feel is right for that, then it is probably a good idea to pause it or at least adapt how you're doing it. So here, for example, Heather is revamping her YouTube creator course that she first made 2 years ago, Zero to YouTube Hero. And it's like a start to finish, everything you need to know to make a YouTube channel. It's an online course. It's really good. It was really good. And now she's making it even better. And it's been scheduled to be, marketed and released now for, months. But all this stuff has happened. And so we've been talking about is it a good time? Is it not a good time? And we decided, she decided, we decided together. I just don't want to make it sound like I was in charge of the thing that she made. But we talked about it, and then we decided together it would be a good idea to just continue with it because there are so many people now who do want to jump in either out of necessity or because they have the time and start creating YouTube channels. So we thought it would still be a good idea to sell the course, but she was trying to figure out how do I, announce it or anything? Do I say hey, are you at home? And we decided just don't do that because that's going to seem like you're trying to profit off the situation. If you market it as, hey, you're at home right now and you want to start a YouTube channel, now spend money on this thing, that's not great. Whereas if you just market it as normal and go like, hey, look, here's a great way, awesome resource for people who want to, you know, have a very concise guide to starting and creating a good YouTube channel. It's right here. We're just not going to talk about all the worldwide stuff that's happening. Then it lets people make the decision for themselves. They can contextualize their own way and understand what's happening and where things are happening. But then it's not like trying to take advantage of a negative situation. And I think that that is just key, because all these platforms really thrive on authenticity more than anything. Inauthenticity and that kind of stuff can boost people in the short term, but in the long term, being genuine and authentic is the thing that makes it sustainable. And it's very important as you're making stuff during a time like this to make sure that you're adhering to whatever it is that makes the stuff that you make authentic. And I keep saying you because, yes, I am offering this advice, but it's also like I'm talking to myself and just remembering, not that I want to like profit off of this, but I just want to make sure that everything I do also follows this, so that it's very clear, even if I'm talking about a camera body or a camera lens or something that seems totally irrelevant, that I'm not doing so in a selfish or insensitive way. So that's at least how I've been thinking about it and approaching it for the time being. And that's just my point of view and my way of doing it. And like I said, especially when it comes to YouTube, it's just kind of business as usual. But there are other ways to do it. So, and you know, however you do it is right, as long as it's authentic to you. I do think for people who are struggling with the idea of still creating stuff as normal and releasing stuff as normal, but don't want to stop making stuff because it is really therapeutic, even before anyone else sees it, just the planning, the production, the execution of it is really fun. It's really therapeutic, just as always, but at this time, it gives you much more of a sense of normalcy than it has in the past. So losing that and just pausing it for however long indefinitely probably isn't necessarily the best thing to do in a lot of cases for a lot of people. And so I do think it is smart for those people who are just sort of like batch creating content, I guess. Normally, I don't like that idea because it just sounds sort of low effort in some ways. But building a catalog of content, I think, is a good idea if you don't want to release stuff right now, which totally makes sense. And depending on what you make, it just might not be something that makes sense to do right now. If you run a channel that's all about like cruise ship tips and how to, you know, get the best out of your money on a cruise and find the best cruises and all that kind of stuff, it really doesn't make sense to release that kind of content right now because nobody's going on cruises. But it doesn't mean you couldn't make all kinds of stuff and then when things pick up again, start releasing it. Of course, you run the risk of, you want to keep it quote unquote evergreen, so that way you're not saying very, very specific things that will change, you know, in a month or two whenever you're able to release that stuff. Hopefully not longer than that. But I think that that's a great idea, and that can even possibly ease some stress when things start getting back to normal, because you'll already have a whole bunch of your content ready to go. Some of you might know that I've been scheduling out my videos for almost a year now, and it's made a huge difference. So what I did at the beginning of last summer, we can kind of, just to give you a little more context, because I'm a huge fan of context. When I started my YouTube channel, it was very, like, the first 10 videos were just sort of random whenever I made videos. And then I did 30 videos in 30 days, which was intense, but it was awesome. And then I did a video a week for the next year. And that worked really, really well. And it built the channel really well. But I was noticing was how stressed out I was getting in a way that I didn't realize by doing the video a week, because I still had my full-time job, still had life outside of this. And then, it was basically kind of forcing, every weekend you have to make a video. It takes time to film, to edit, to plan, try to get it up in time for whatever the release day was. I think my release day used to be Tuesday. And I didn't realize it was stressful because the stuff I was doing was fun, but it was really stressful. And then I just went in the opposite direction, and I was like, okay, no more scheduled uploads. My microphone cut out for a second. That was weird. I love to do a video a week, but I don't have to. And so it just for maybe the next almost another, oh my God, it's been like so long, almost another year then, I kind of just did random uploads. Essentially, whenever I was done with a video, I would just upload it right away and release it. Didn't matter what day or time it was, how often it was. It was usually a video a week, sometimes a little more. And there might have been 1 or 2 weeks that I didn't do one. But that worked, but it's still there was still sort of that constant, it's almost like a low-level anxiety of like, I should be working on something, I need to make something, that kind of thing happening. And so last summer, I was like, okay, I'm coming to terms with the idea that it's okay to be strategic with your channel or the content that you create. It's not a bad thing to have a strategy. It doesn't take away from like the purity of it or whatever, the fun of it or the DIY nature. It can just be a smart thing to do. And I personally decided that Thursday was a good release day because I noticed that videos I released tended to do well on Friday. So I picked Thursday because they do well on Friday. But Thursday made sense for me just because they would be ready then. They'd be there on Thursday. They'd be ready for people on Friday, which a lot of people who watch stuff, during their lunch breaks at work, during the week or whatever, there's video there. And then the video's also there on the weekend for people who catch up on all their YouTubing and stuff over the weekend. And that seemed to work really well. It also gave me kind of a cushion. It didn't take over my Friday in terms of releasing stuff. It didn't take over my weekend. And it was late enough in the week that I could actually spend some time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night if I needed to finish stuff up and edit it. So Thursday just made sense to me. And then at the beginning of last summer, when I had a little extra time, I worked really hard to make a few extra videos. So instead of just doing the one, there were several weeks where I did like 2 or 3 videos a week to kind of build ahead, and then just started scheduling those out. So now when I make a video, it doesn't just automatically go up on Thursday. It goes up on the next available Thursday, which is usually 3 or 4 weeks out. Ironically, I found that 4 videos scheduled 4 weeks out is about the max that I would want to do, because beyond that, you literally start forgetting like what the videos are and what the stuff is that you've made, or it could just feel like it loses relevance. So I wouldn't really recommend going beyond 4 weeks out. And usually I have, 3 or 4 ready to go. But the fun part is you can then shuffle them up a little bit. If a video you have, sometimes you kind of know a video is going to do better than another video. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're better or worse. You just sort of know what tends to do better, but that's not always the video that you want to make. So it's nice because if a video does really well, and then you have a video that you think might not do as well, you can kind of like shift the order. And I usually try to like sandwich them. If I have a video that does really well, the next one might be one that I think might not do quite as well, and it kind of gets a boost. And then after that was one that I think will do better. And of course, sometimes it makes no sense because the ones you think aren't going to do well are the ones that do better than anything. But, in terms of trying to predict it as much as you can, it's nice to sort of have options of moving stuff around. And sometimes you make a video that just becomes relevant at a different time. So if I make a video now and I schedule it for 4 weeks from now, but then something happens or there's a new product release or there's just a new trend that pops up and now that video is way more relevant, then yeah, I would definitely shift it around. But most importantly, other than just giving those options, that flexibility has eased so much stress, so much stress. I'm still working on videos constantly because you have to keep updating them. It's almost like having a savings account. Like you're still putting money in the savings account to make up for all the little withdrawals that you're taking. But it's just reduced so much pressure. And there have been a few times where whether it's, something pops up that's very unexpected, or I'm not feeling well, or work just gets really busy or whatever, and I just literally don't have time to make a video, and I don't have to stress about it. I can just say, okay, it's no big deal. I don't need to make a video this week because I've already got that stuff ready to go. So one thing I think a lot of us are learning during this time while we're spending so much time at home and everything is hopefully taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other. And, I think it's definitely a humbling sort of reality check in a lot of ways. And I think that when it's over and we start to go back to just the normal grind that we've been used to, approaching that with much more of a priority on health and care and personal well-being and stuff, I think would be very important. So if you're not comfortable releasing stuff, but you want to create a nice library of work to release when you feel comfortable, this could be a great way to then take care of yourself in that time as well, because you're not going to have that stress of, oh my gosh, what do I make? How do I finish it in time? You're going to have this nice catalog of stuff that you can dip into and spread out however you want. And that could actually be really, really helpful. Might even be something worth doing if you are creating and releasing stuff right now, still just jumping in and exploring and maybe making, building up a little bit of a library too, to kind of help ease some of that pressure if you're somebody who finds yourself with the time to do so. I know that even though my work is closed, what a weird sound I just made. Even though my work is closed, we're still supposed to be doing distance learning, but the guidelines are really vague and everything we do has to be accessible to every single student. So, I can't say like, hey, go make a movie and edit it on this thing, or go design or whatever, because not everyone has a computer, not everyone has the software, not everyone has the equipment. So it's like the stuff that we're doing has to be pretty minimal. But just getting things situated and figured out is tricky. If it ends up that the school closure goes longer than April and like we are gone the rest of the school year or something, which I really genuinely don't want to have happen, as much as I love breaks and stuff. This is not one of those breaks that's like, yay, it's summer. This is very different. But if that does happen, even putting in the extra work to do school from home, I think I would have the time to then probably make a little bit of extra content as well for myself, and again, to keep myself sane. So even though I'm still releasing stuff right now, if that happens and there is that little bit of extra time, I think I would probably also kind of kick my stuff into high gear a little bit to just make extra stuff, because I think it's a good investment. Like I said, it's like putting a deposit into a savings account. You never know when it's going to become valuable, but wow, when you need it, it's really, really great to have it there. So it's a little early, but I think it's time to jump into our Gear of the Week segment, which is going to be different than normal because, again, we talked about authenticity. We talked about paying attention to stuff. I can talk about camera gear all day, and a lot of you know that. But I wanted to share something that has helped not only me, but also Heather, and from what I've seen online, helped a lot of people as well. So it's not directly like video production and leveling up your video, but it's sort of techie related, and it's definitely like personal health and well-being related, which is my choice for Gear of the Week this week is Animal Crossing New Horizon on the Nintendo Switch. Basically my new favorite game. And I've never played an Animal Crossing game before, and so 2 weeks ago, one of our dogs passed away, our corgi Ollie, which I don't really want to get into that right now because we're not there yet. It was very devastating on top of all the other insanity in the world. And luckily, about a week later, this game came out, which like I just saw on Twitter described as quote unquote the most chill game experience you can have. And Heather had played it before, and it's so good. It's just like, it's so calming. It's so fun. It's a great way to just focus on stuff. If you want to talk about escapism, it's perfect escapism. I don't even feel guilty putting like a few extra hours into it just because it's so relaxing and just fun and enjoyable. And, it's like a weird purity to it that just feels really good to play with. But also, kind of going back to what I mentioned a second ago, creativity that has popped up during this time, people doing live streams and people doing all kinds of like online classes, and you'll see someone on Instagram just like doing an instructional live stream on how to do whatever. And I've seen videos where people like made ghetto homemade Disneyland rides like in their basement and stuff. And it's like hilarious. Like there's this burst of creativity that I haven't seen in a really long time. It almost reminds me of when like high-speed internet first became common and people had more access to these things, or online video, and you just saw this explosion of creativity because nobody had access to it before. This is kind of that, because having to stay at home and having to not do a lot of the things we're normally used to kind of takes away a lot of facades. And then it's just sort of the pure creativity pops up in a really cool way. And so I bring that up because Animal Crossing has an online feature where you can visit each other's islands, and which is just really fun. Like if you're stuck at home and you don't have anyone to hang out with, or even for us, like Heather's family lives in LA, we can't go visit them because we can't leave. But her brother and like some of our friends and stuff, they can visit our island, and it kind of feels like if you put them on like speakerphone or FaceTime or whatever, and then you're running around in the game and like showing each other parts of your island or giving each other gifts, it's shocking how much it feels like you're actually hanging out. And it's so fun. I've even seen there was somebody on Twitter who shared a thing where they were supposed to get married right now, but their wedding had obviously got canceled and they couldn't do it. So their friends set up like a surprise wedding, or they basically did a wedding like in the game. They got everyone to an island. They built a little like beachside wedding thing, and they just got married like through the game. That kind of stuff is amazing. So this has been a really fun little like injection of creativity. It is $60, but oh my gosh, you will get your money's worth out of that $60 if you have a Nintendo Switch. I did also find out, unfortunately, it seems like Switches are also sold out everywhere. So it's like toilet paper, eggs, bread, and Nintendo Switches are like the things that are hard to find, because I think so many people jumped into Animal Crossing because it is so calming and it's such a great release, and it's just like, it's an awesome escape from the insanity that's happening right now. And it's social, it's fun. Even if you're not a huge gamer, I wouldn't consider myself a huge gamer. But wow, it's an amazing game. Jump into it. If you've never played the Animal Crossing series before, it really doesn't matter. You'll pick it up right away. It's all self-explanatory. It's so good. So if you want genuinely the quote-unquote most chill game experience you've ever had, and you need a little bit of escapism, check out Animal Crossing New Horizon on the Nintendo Switch. I mean, I guess check out any Animal Crossing. Like, I haven't played the other ones. I'm sure they're also amazing. This is the one I play. This is the newest one. I really like it. I highly recommend it. It's a good way to just kind of take care of yourself in a crazy time. So hopefully that kind of gives an overview of at least where I'm at in terms of creating and releasing online content during all of this. If you're somebody who creates online content, shares it, hopefully you're managing as well. A big part of it is sometimes we do need to hear that it is okay to just make stuff like normal. Like, you don't have to just sit at home with your hands folded and do nothing. You can make stuff, you can share it. There's a need for it. It is almost a service in a way to provide that method of escape for people who need it, who really do need it right now. And you really shouldn't feel guilty as long as you are working to maintain that level of authenticity that drew people to you in the first place. So I'd love to hear if anyone has any ideas or comments on that. Of course, you can reach out to me on any of the platforms. I'm at Sodar and Tom on all the things. And of course, you can go to anchor.fm/enthusiasm and leave a voice message, and I can have your thoughts in a future episode, which would be awesome. So if you have anything you want to share, if you have any thoughts, if you have any input, if you just have an idea, a strategy of how you're handling creating content during this time, definitely share that. I would love to have you be a part of a future episode. But with that being said, I hope this was a nice little bit of escapism for you. Thanks for spending your time with me, and I will see you in the next episode.